Hello. Hi. I would love to know for those of you who are here in the chat right now, can you let me know how the audio is? And because I've been playing around with audio recently and now I'm starting to question myself. And it's the type of thing that can make me go a little squirrely. So, and I'm going to turn off the monitor now that the music's done because I don't like hearing double of myself. There we go. All right. I can see in the chat audio is good. Sounds good over here. And let's also say hello to some folks and we will get in. There's so much to cover, but I do want to say hi. Hello, Syed. I think I'm saying it right. You correct me, please. Fabian, nice to see you. Oh, it's so nice to see you, Eden. And we've got Neil. Great to see you virtually. Saw you in person recently. We got Cheryl. Hi, hi, hi. And let's see, anyone else? We got Deal Billy. Nice to see you. And yeah, I'm curious how many people. Dan is here. This is so great. Martin. Who else we got? Zahid and Pellinor DSP. Not sure what your name is. Mark. We got a loving choice. Hi. Okay. Elevated awesomeness. I love that. Oh man, so many people. Ed is here and Rich is here. So many great people joining. And please keep saying hi. I am going to jump into this because I want to cover so much and I'm going to be realistic that I probably can't cover everything, but keep me on track if I start to go on these side quests that are just insane. But I really do, my intention today is do sort of a refresh. I did a series on Notion for content creation 3 years ago, over 3 years ago. I did it over 4 Saturdays in May. I had a lot of fun doing it. And I noticed people are still watching it. Not as many people. I think they realize that it's 3 years old, but I think in the last year had 1.4 thousand people who were watching that video and they didn't even, you couldn't hide the title. They didn't even have a status property. So much has changed. So I thought, let's do it. And especially recently, I was teaching a sort of content planning workshop in person at Ecamm's Creator Camp. And a number of people at the end of the workshop, because the workshop was actually not about Notion specifically, the workshop was just about how you stay organized in general. But I mentioned Notion obviously. And the question came up about helping, like, what resources do you have? And I just thought maybe it's time for a refresh. So that's what I am going to do today. And today's intended to be friendly for beginners, the people who are maybe curious about how Notion could work for them, or the person, I've heard a lot of people say, I started an account a while ago, I'm just not using it, or I am underusing it. And when it comes to Notion, I do think, first of all, it's not going to be for everyone, and that's completely okay with any tool. Find the one that works for you. But it does help if you know how it works in order to make that decision. The other thing is that I find with content creation, there are so many creators who are using Notion, myself included. And when you see all of their different ways that they stay organized, or maybe you grab one of their templates, that if you don't understand how Notion works, sometimes that can actually create more headaches to use someone else's system, someone else's template in Notion, because you're not really sure what's going on. And if you don't understand, especially if you're using someone else's template, if you don't understand how Notion works, but also how their system and how they've set up their template works, it can be really frustrating. And I just really want to make sure that if you understand it, you might use the template better. Personally, I have a few principles, and I actually have little buttons that I made up for my principles. For example, we'll be talking about a template principle that I have, and that has to do with making sure it works for you. A template should not create more work. So I guess that's my first one. Let's actually show templates should solve problems. They should not make more problems. And that's something I often see with Notion, is that people will get really frustrated, or they have this pile, I call it the Notion graveyard, or the template graveyard, where you have something that someone else built. All this to say, when you understand it, when you understand how it works, you'll be able to use it a lot better. So just want to make sure that that is clear. Very quickly, why Notion? For me personally, one, it works really well with my style, my brain, how I'm wired. I love that it's customizable and flexible. But the other major thing is that I can use it along almost every point in my content organization system. So when I'm collecting ideas, they go directly into Notion. When I am planning and mapping things out, that all happens in Notion. When I am getting ready and prepping, I will do all of the note taking, outlining. If I write a script, I don't do that often, but sometimes I do. That will happen in Notion. And also to be able to access things before. So if someone says, "Did you have a video on this?" I just pop in Notion, grab the link, and send it to them. And if I'm reviewing, I'm doing that in Notion. So it really hits on the whole kind of cycle that I have for my content workflow. I am not using a whole ton of other tools for staying organized. I will mention today I do use Sunsama as my digital planner, and that I can talk a little bit about that later because I know I mentioned that recently and there were a lot of questions, and it works with Notion. So I can also share about that. So we're doing a live build. What does that mean? It means that I'm going to show you some examples, but then we'll actually start to build one together. If you haven't built one, maybe you've relied on other people's templates, I think it's really helpful to know. Also, I really think honestly, building from scratch is a very useful habit to build, and it doesn't take as long as you think. And when we do that together, then you will understand it. There are also some brand new updates as of a week ago, and I think a week ago when Notion had a big event and they talked about customizable layouts on your database pages. So I'm going to show you that, what that looks like, how that works. They also did some updates to automations, including sending yourself an email when something changes in your Notion space. They also have forms. I'd love to do a demonstration, time permitting, of maybe if you have a guest database, like maybe you have a podcast and you want to collect it, or if you're doing a giveaway, you want to have a form, those will all populate into Notion. And you can even have Notion send you an email when a new form comes in. It's pretty cool. Okay, let's actually go into the demo space. And if you have questions, please put a Q in the, it's just so much easier to find a Q for a question, just for me to search for them. Q colon would be really, really great. So first, I just want to start with a sample content database. And this is a demo space that I built a little while ago. It's very simple. And you can see the name of the workspace. So here it's called Erin Hills Notion. So this is not where I do my work. And I just have 4 different pages. So I've got one called Workspace Ideas. This is just a standard page. Think of it like a Word document. You can have lists on it. You can have images. It's a little better than a Word document, but this is a clean slate and you can put different things on the page. Then you have what we call database pages. This entire page is just a content database and nothing else. This is just a database. So everything on this page, like kind of like a spreadsheet, except that you can see this in different layouts. I also have one that's called the library. This is just an example of maybe you're collecting resources from different areas. You want to gather them somewhere. And then I have a sample of a task database, and we can see how these can work together later. So let's just first go through the essentials, which is that when you have a database built, the beauty of Notion is that you have different ways of seeing it, and there are other tools that can do this as well. This is our typical spreadsheet view where I just have a whole list of things. Each one is technically its own page. If I were to open the page, I can see the title a little bit better, and then I can see that a database page has these different properties. And then there's a space on the bottom. So if I just wanted to type things, maybe I wanted to take notes, brainstorm, think about ideas, draft. This is a LinkedIn post. Maybe I want to draft the post directly in here. I can do all of that in here. And so that's what the individual page looks like. But I can also see this in different views. So if I want to look at a calendar view, this is the layout of the calendar. And here I can see when these were published. I can also see certain things about the content. So here I have a view of the status. This is today. We could see with the red. We've got one that's ready to publish or one that's scheduled. That's a mistake on my part. I shouldn't have 2 on one day. But in the calendar view, I could actually say this is ready to publish, but we're going to put this over here on this date that doesn't have one. So I can use this calendar view just to drag and reorganize things, which I really love. Let's say that I thought, you know what, I want to talk about not make this tip here, and let's just drag this over here. You can move these around, and that makes it really, really easy for you to get organized and to plan. So I love it for planning. Then there's also a way to see it in groupings across the top, so the board view. And a natural way to see this might be looking at the status of your content. Everything goes from idea over to fully done. And you can name these different things if you like. These are just examples of some statuses you might have. And you also, the nice thing for that I really love about Notion is that you can have icons, and that visual cue lets you know right away. In this case, this is a YouTube video and this is a post. And you can see an example of just how quickly you can differentiate between these. But you can also create custom views where you only see certain things. And this I love. Being able to have context specific views is really, really helpful. So if I just want to see what are all of my, this is a filter, what are all of my YouTube videos? So the content type is YouTube video, and the topic is marketing strategy. So when you start to collect information about your content, it makes it easier for you to create these specific views of how you want to see your information. And that's a question I always want you to think about is how do you want to see it? How do you want to group your information? And what's going to help you? This is actually one of the principles I have, which is this idea of let context drive design, meaning what's the context you're working with? If you are generating ideas for YouTube videos, don't have a view that's cluttered up with maybe LinkedIn posts as well. If you are planning, maybe you want to see a calendar view so that you can move things around and actually look at the publication dates. So when you are designing a view and you're choosing your filters, you're choosing your layout, think about how you're actually working with the information. So that's something else that I really want you to keep in mind as we go through this. A gallery view. Now, this is not a great gallery view because this is a demo account and I did not create thumbnails and images for these, but I do have my content creation database open. So I'm just going to flip to this briefly so you can see a thumbnail view that's highly visual. So this is and I'm just going to tuck that away. So this is a view of all of my content in a gallery view where I can see all the thumbnails I have. Now this is filtered just to see what are all of the, it's recorded live stream or playlist. I don't have any other types of posts in here. This is just for me to see my YouTube. So that's an example of a more visual gallery view. We can also look at a timeline view where if we scroll down here, we can actually see things on the timeline. This can be helpful if you are kind of mapping out things. It's also really helpful for moving things all at once. If I were to highlight all of, let's say, if I wanted to highlight these and I move them, they'll all move, but they'll stay relative to each other, which is a really handy thing if you need to move a few things all by the exact same number of days. That's just a quick tip around the timeline view. And we also have different perspectives. So here's a table view that's grouped by the category, or not the category, but the topic. So in this database, we have topics for each one. So brand development, analytics, A/B testing. So you can group these and see, okay, what are my different groupings? What are the different topics that I have? And so you can see everything that's related to strategy, everything that's related to email marketing. This person is a marketer, if you couldn't tell. And let's see what else I want to also, we've got an example of idea by topic. So this is another board view. And remember, this is a context idea. So when we are using the context principle, I might be too nerdy about those little graphics. This is an example of I find it really easy to generate ideas when I have some guidance. So if I say, okay, I want to push myself to generate 3 more ideas about A/B testing, or maybe digital trends. I want to make sure that I have 3 more ideas about digital trends, and then I can just add new pages and directly idea and brainstorm into this view. So that would be another example of how you can leverage how you set this up, how you want to see your information. It's all driven by the context that you're in. So that's an example of a content database. So let's actually build a new database from scratch, especially for people who have never done it before or you're a little rusty, and we'll see some of the new things. Right here, I have a private, this is the only thing in my sidebar. This is a very simple workspace, just has a private section. If you were to share pages, so if I shared this page over here with other people, maybe I invite some guests, then they would be able to access this page and it would move into a shared category on the side. So let's add a brand new page. So I'm just going to click the plus here. There are a few ways to add a new page, but that's a pretty simple one. And I can give this a name. I would like this to be, we're going to do a fresh content database. So let's call this content 2.0. This is just a new version. And down at the bottom, it has options for table, form, templates. If you click on the three dots, you can pick a specific view of a database. I'm just going to start with a table. Now we've said this is going to be a database page, and I want to have a brand new table. This is a new blank database. In this view, it has two different properties, the name property, which we'll want to keep, and then the tags category, which you can keep or you can modify. And if you look at the old example, I like having the idea of being able to tag my content with, I like topics and categories. They help me to brainstorm ideas. I got that a long time ago from an entrepreneur whose name I cannot remember, but if it comes to me, I will let you know. So let's actually call this topic. And this is an example of, do you want this to be, you can only have one topic per video, or do you want to be able to tag multiple? Right now, this is what we call, and now we're editing the property, so just opened over here. This is what we call a multi-select, and that means I can have more than one tag. If I want to force it into a category, and maybe I want to make sure just one topic per piece of content, then I could change it into what we call a select, which says you can only have one. It's just one topic per video. I'm going to do that for now, and we'll just leave these options for a moment. The other thing I want to do is add, we saw the other example of category. So let's do a new one. And actually, I started to type the name. At first, when you create a new property, so if in case I went too quickly, press the plus here. That will help you make a new property. And there are all sorts of types that you can see here. I would like another select, and this one I'm going to call the category. In this example, I will actually fill out some options that you can see, which is that maybe you have content that is more of a, what do you call, how-to. Sometimes I'll call it both how-to, actionable, so a tutorial. Other times you might have behind-the-scenes content that you are sharing with people. Maybe you are doing a comparison and you want to compare two things. You could also call this X versus Y, whatever you want. X versus Y. Sorry, I had a little pop-up in the corner from my display link. I'll talk about that later, maybe. Okay, so this is just a quick example that maybe I've got a how-to, maybe I've got a comparison, and perhaps you're someone, maybe you are someone who talks about case studies. And I'm just putting this in as an example. You could also have interviews. There are all different types of content that you can help to categorize the type of content that you are actually making. And you can add these. Whereas the topics, that depends on what you make content about. And so the other thing when you're making content is I highly recommend having a date. So you could say publish date if you want, or if you just like the term date, you can just pick date. It's already set up for you with the term date. We'll just leave it there. You can also have the, what's the other one? I like URL. So if I start to also type URL, it'll find the type of property I want to add. And we can keep it as URL, nothing special here, and close that. So this is how easy it is to create. And you can also adjust the width of these if you want to. And now something that did not exist 3.5 years ago is the status property. And so let's add a status property. So if I start to type the word status, you will see that there is a type of property called status. And it will have 3 defaults. So it's got 3 different categories: to do, in progress, and complete. And you can customize these. So if I want my default for content to be idea, I'm just going to rename this and say idea. So all I've done is just clicked on this and edited what it's called. But maybe I get suggestions from my audience and they have ideas for me. So I can say suggestion. And I can always reorder these. Idea right now is set to be the default. And perhaps I like to have something, I call it next up, but you don't have to have this. This for me signals that this is the content I am going to actively start working on soon. So, and sometimes I like to flag it with a different color. So I might say yellow to let me know that one is going to be coming. So you can think about what are the different ways that I like to categorize and have a status. This is a really good example of how do I make this work for me And this is where we come to this template principle. They should save you time. If you have used someone else's template, and I'm just gonna go here for a second. If you've used someone else's template and you realize that the way they name things just does not click with you, it doesn't make sense, that's not the word you would use, change it. Either build your own, use their template as inspiration, just build your own version, or once you start realizing this doesn't work, that is where I want you to make the changes. And this is actually what I call the friction principle. Notice friction and address it early. So if you are someone who realizes every time I go to place to select the status, it feels weird or it's not the language I would use, change the language. And this is kind of embarrassing to admit, but when I used someone else's template for the library, and they had sort of rating systems they would use, tags they would use, and I realized I would never use those terms. But that's what they would use because everyone's wired differently. And so please, please, please change it as soon as possible. Because if someone else's template doesn't use the same language as you, you are going to experience a little bit of friction every single time you use it. And I think I went a whole year before finally changing that. Each time it was just this little annoyance, but that adds up over time. So I really want to make sure that I drive that issue home. The other thing, as I just look at the preview, is let me know in the comments, is this size okay? Would you like me to zoom in a little bit? Is this too small? So just let me know because I can zoom in. There is a certain point. I'll zoom in once more. And maybe let's actually collapse this and zoom in again. I do want you to be able to see these things. So we've got our status. I'd like to also move this over and I'm going to drag the status over here and we'll just adjust the width of the status, but let's keep changing it because I actually didn't get very far. So if I click on the name of a property, then I can edit the property. It will pop open on the side here for me to change. And this is where I might do a few things differently. Because I make video content and also written content, I will have maybe a few things like preparation. Maybe if I'm researching, outlining, creating assets, it's to me moved to in progress. I am actually working on this. So I'll call this prep. Let's actually move this one to, for written, I might have draft if it's in draft form. And then here, let's say I could have one called ready to film if I wanted to for my videos. And then I could also have another one that's ready to edit if I'm someone who edits. Also, if you work with a team, you work with editors, they can also, and also with the new automations, they can be notified when something is ready to edit. It can send an email to your editor. That's pretty cool, but we'll talk about that later. And what else? You could have something like ready to review. Ready to edit would actually work for many things actually. And then once it's, let's just leave it here. I won't do all of them. For done, let's change this to, we want to rename. So I will have one that's ready to publish, meaning it is good to go, it's complete, but it's not out there yet. I like to have one called scheduled, meaning like today's stream was scheduled but not published, although now it could change to published. And then we can also have published. And I will just reorder those so they make sense for me. But you might not use those terms. You might use completely different terms, or maybe you're working with a team and you all have your own language. Use the language that works for you. You can also have different ones. Now, one other thing I want to show in here is that I like to have a category. Sometimes you have an idea and then you just keep seeing it over and over again and you realize this is not going to happen. So I used to use, I can't remember the old term. The one I use now is called released. This feels much freer. I'm going to let that go, but I want it to stay in the database so I can keep track of some old ideas. The opposite thing, or just another alternative, and I'll change the color to this maybe as a light gray that's shaded here and put that at the bottom as well. So if I just realize this idea is not happening and it's just been sitting there in my database, let's get rid of it. So and I like that language also better than, I can't remember what I used to call it, but you could say archived for now. Now, this is the alternative. If you want to keep track of some old ideas, but not necessarily have them in your database anymore, you could have an archive page. So I do have an archive page where I'll actually just move things. If you drag items out of a database, they will just turn into a text. Or a page, and then you can also turn them into text. So I have some archival pages where I can just pull things out of the database so they're not cluttering up the database. So that is another thing you can do. So we've just edited the status property. I'm going to go into the chat and just kind of check in if we have any questions that you're thinking to yourself. So let's see here. I've got a question. Okay. So, oh, why is that not popping up? There we go. So, does anything you show today require a paid plan? Some of the automations require a paid plan, but anything I do in this test workspace is free because this workspace is actually not paid because the payment is by the workspace, not the account. So while I do have the paid sort of a paid personal plan in my account, everything you see here today is free because this account is not paid. This is a free account. And if we do something where it does cost money, it'll either tell us how many chances we have, I think, to use it, or it'll just say you need to upgrade your plan. So that is that question here. And then we also have, okay, we've got, oh, and then team is only paid. That is correct. You can have guests in your space. So there's a difference between guests and members. There are limitations to what a guest can do. If you're on the free plan, I believe it's 5 guests. It might have changed. And if you have the single paid plan, you can have many more guests. I can't remember the exact number. We can always look it up. Or if anyone knows, let me know in the chat. But, oh, I love this. So different language, shelved. So this is an example where I use released and Kyle would use shelved. It looks like Gary likes the word destroyed. And this is why, one, I love that it's so personal that you can actually choose what you want to call it. And I highly encourage you to personalize your space, even if you're using someone else's template. Change the language to what you like, to what makes it more enjoyable to work. So that is what I would do there. Okay, so we have very, very basic setup here. And that also leads me to another principle that I have, surprise, surprise, which is the simplicity principle. And this is, I think, based off of Einstein, but this idea of as simple as possible, but no simpler. For example, in this database, a really simple example would be if we just had the name, the status, the date. That would be really simple. You could still see it in a calendar view. You could see it by status, and that might be enough for you. And that's totally fine. You might actually find the idea of having a topic and a category too much work. And I applaud you if you say, nope, I don't want those. That is completely fine. If, however, you wanted to start grouping your information and be able to put them into buckets, you are going to be limited. And this is where adding a little layer of complexity, just one extra layer, that can actually make things easier for you. So when it's too simple, it might actually be difficult for you to see things in groupings. If you also content type, for example, right now, we don't have a way to differentiate between a video and, say, a written post. And while there's nothing wrong with that, and I could use emojis. So let's do an example where I have I'm going to use for my sample, I think, I'm going to pretend that this is a person who does knitting content, because I do knit, but I am not planning on making knitting content. So I can just do a sample here. But let's say someone wants to say, wool versus synthetic is it's a video idea. And we'll open the page here. The topic, we're going to say fabrics, or let's just say yarns. So I've got the topic. The category is a comparison. So I'm comparing those two things. I don't have to have a date yet. That's not important. And actually, let's just drag this. I'm going to drag this up to the top. And I don't have a link yet. That's fine. I do maybe want to add an icon to say that this is a video. So I can have an icon here. I've got this play button. You can search for things, but if I say play and make it red, this could tell me that it's a video. That's what I have on the other one. So when I close this, I've got something. And then maybe I can say cleaning smelly wool. I may or may not have had to deal with that recently. And maybe this is going to be a written post. And so here I've got an example of a pencil square. I could also start to do write and say that I want to do written. So maybe I actually want to use this one. And let's say that our written post is blue. The topic is yarns, and the category as maybe how to actionable. I can tell by looking that these are not the same. But if I wanted to have a new view and say this one, a new view, and I'll just do a table view, and this one will name the view to say YouTube, I can't filter this by the content type right now. So this is too simple. So you get the idea of the simplicity principle. So we need to add a property, and I'm going to add a property here that is content type. And I am going, now with this is content status, instead I'm going to say content type here. And here, this is where I want to differentiate the type of content I make. So we'll say YouTube video, and we can say, maybe this person, where are they sharing their written advice? Actually, maybe this is a blog post. Okay, so I've got and I'm going to change the color of this. So if I click on this little arrow here, I can start to have it match. I would like it to be consistent with the icon personally. So I want the blog post and the YouTube video to match, and we can do that here. So now when I'm looking at these and I have this YouTube, I can say filter by content type and just show me YouTube videos. I wasn't able to do that before. And oh, I didn't also tag it. So let's go back here and we can say the content type is a YouTube video. So now when I look at my YouTube view, I can see it. So that's an example of adding just this level of complexity. And I think that is really important to have. How do you want to be able to filter? How do you want to sort? And how do you want to view your information? That is when you can actually start to really power up or level up your feedback. I also saw, I think here when earlier, let's just grab it around so Max said, double click automatically adjust the column width and content. It's kind of like Excel. This was added in a little bit later, but if you double click when you're hovering and you double click, it'll go to the width. So whatever the widest is here, if I double click, it will go a little bit wider because I had it a little bit there. And here, if I click this, it'll be small unless I start to add things. I could double click again and make it wider. So you can start to see all of your information. Also, if you don't want to see something in a view, you can hide it. So if in this view, maybe let's call this table, I'm going to click on the name of the table. We'll say rename, and let's just call this one ideas. And I can put a filter and say, only show me the status where it is idea. And actually, I might just add all of these because to me, this means that maybe they're not quite ready yet. So this is all our ideas. And this one is just an empty page. Notion always gives you 3 empty pages. Let's just do one more example of a right versus left hand knitting. And this will be a video. So this is an example where I added these manually, the icons. I know you can do bulk adding icons. So if I were to click all of these, I could actually change all of the icons. Well, first of all, I can bulk select and I could change the status of all of these if I want to. I can change the topic, the category, the date. But if I click on these 3 dots and say edit icon, I can actually choose and bulk upload an icon. But I can also use templates so that every single time I have a YouTube video, then I can always make sure it has the same things ready to go. There is a cool addition with icons and emojis, and this is a fairly new addition. If I open the side here and go into settings and go into emoji, I can actually add an emoji here. So let's do an example where if I add emoji, upload an image, and I've got some here, some of my social ones. Let's choose, where's this? This one. And I can name it. So let's say YouTube and save. Now I've got this saved in here. Let's do 1 or 2 more. I'll upload this image and we'll do an Instagram. It doesn't want you to have any capitals, by the way. And we'll do another example where we will add, let's see, we'll do a LinkedIn. And you can do these for whatever you want. And this is just for using in my space. So anything, or if you've got your own icons and your own color scheme, etc., then you can create these custom templates and you can add these emojis. And yeah, I think that's pretty awesome. So if I wanted to, I can open this page, click on icon, And if I start to type, I don't know which one it's in actually. Let's just start to type YouTube. YouTube is there. So I can now add that, which is a really nice addition and change they've made. But every time I go in here and I have to say, okay, the content type is YouTube, and maybe I'd like to move this up a little bit taller here. And then I would have to change the icon. That would get really cumbersome. And so that is where we can save some time with adding content. And I'm just going to collapse that. In this top right corner with this little down arrow / chevron, I can add templates. And so let's add a YouTube template. I like for most of my, there are some exceptions for most of my templates, I like to have a way to tell that it's a template from the title. And so I like to use a square bracket. Also, if I'm searching for a template, if I just start typing square bracket, then usually that will help me search faster. So we'll just say YouTube video. Now I know that's a template. I'm going to add the icon, which we used this recently, so it pops up at the top. And we also can add that we want this to always be a YouTube video. So that's pretty simple, but what I'm doing is saving time that every time I make a new YouTube video, then I'm in good shape. The other one, let's make an Instagram one, because I don't think someone talking about knitting is going to be on LinkedIn, even though I spend time there. So let's do an icon for, let's look up Instagram, and we will call this, just make it a little simple, IG. Just say IG. This is where you can start to get specific. Is it a reel? Is it a post? Is it a story? And that's up to you, how linear you want. So for content type, we'll say Instagram. So maybe I will actually have a differentiation where I say Instagram reel, and so let's name this Instagram reel. And that's all we have to worry about there. We've got that template set up, but let's do another Instagram one. And to make it simpler, let's duplicate. So if I click on these 3 dots here, I'm just going to duplicate the Instagram, but this one will be Instagram post. I am not going to make an Instagram story because they disappear, and those feel a lot more impromptu, whereas you're probably going to put some more time into an Instagram post or reel and plan those in advance. Whereas most of the time, stories, they're more impromptu. I wouldn't add probably every story that I wanted to, or every story that I ever did in there. That actually feels like it'd be creating more work. So remember, as simple as possible, but no simpler. So I would not want to have to add every single time I posted a story into my content database. But when I'm planning and saying I want to do a reel about this, then I would, or a post. So we've got those created. So I now have 3 different templates. And then let's just do one more, which is blog. And we can do that writing one. So this emojis, icons, you can also upload to a template. And that is another way that you can easily get access to a template. But I think this new emoji picker option that they've added is really nice. So for icons, let's just pick the one that we did recently, which was the written one. And we'll just say blog. And the content type is a blog post. And because I'm weird about these things, let's add a couple examples, and then I will explain. So if I want to do, maybe I also have let's say getting started with knitting. And this one is going to be, now we see our templates are down here. So if I create it first, I can apply a template. So if I wanted to say that that's a reel, the thing that's bothering me is that this is gray. So I'm going to update this to pink. Click on Instagram reel, and then over here, you can customize the colors. And this, other people don't care about this. I'll fully admit that. For me, I think of pink with Instagram, and I want to, did I just do red for that? Pink, I did red. Click pink, YouTube, red, blog, in this case just happens to be blue. And then just the visuals all help me. So that's just another thing that I would say. If you are, and then this one, the topic, I'm not beginners. I'm not sure what I would call that, honestly. And then the category is how to, actionable, and let's close that. So a lot of you might say, I don't want a category. And topic, this might be knitting style. And this would be comparing 2 things. And also let's just update this and say that this is a blog post. So I'm starting to fill this out. So as you just saw, you could just add a new page. You could click new page. You could also click new over here to add a new page. This will open up. And if I want to have another, I might say, fall 2024 projects. And this is going to be a YouTube video. And this one is behind the scenes. What am I knitting? And we'll just call this patterns. So you can start to see it emerge. So that's one way. Or you can start from a template. And if I click here, I can just say, okay, I want to have a new post. And this one will be, my latest finished project. What did I spell wrong? Yep, there's an S in there. I love typing in public. Okay, my latest finished project. This again is kind of a behind the scenes, and this is patterns. So you can also start that way. If you start from a template, it is going to have the title, so you need to replace the title. And if you start with the title, you can always add the template later. Let's go back and see if there are any kind of follow-up questions and just do a little check-in here. And so I see Tim said 10 guests on the free plan. I think it used to be 5. So 10 is good, I think, for how many people you can have. And now living happily on a farm with abandoned ideas. Probably too long. Yeah, probably a little too long. You might also, I think there are quirks about what characters you can have in there. And let's see. Okay. Can you perform Excel type calculations in Notion? Example, creating a database or customer biller tracking invoicing. So there are Notion formulas, definitely. They are not exactly the same as Excel. So learning Notion formulas is a little bit of a beast. There are, though, automations. Now, this is paid, and I could show a couple examples of automations, but the automations, I think, actually are really powerful. But yes, you can have formulas and you can have automations and you can use formulas in automations, and it starts to get really complex. Today is for the newer user. Although I do want to show simple ones, like when the status changes, send an email to someone. I think that's a really good one. Or if you get a form, send me an email. And Carrie's saying, I've never used Notion, but it looks kind of complicated to try and figure out how to set it up. I'm not seeing any optional pop-up guidance from Notion. So I'm going fairly quickly through it. So if you do say, let's just do an example where I hover, or if I click plus, does it give you, I think so. It depends on what it is. But this is why tutorials help with what's going on. There are tutorials and there is some guidance when you have a brand new space. And I think because I set this space up, usually when you first get something, it will give you some guidance around there. So, but that's a good point. And yes, custom emojis. That's so great. That's something that people have been asking for a long time. And this, okay, I like this example from Paul around things are hard until you start doing them. And I think just getting in here and playing. And the one thing that I would really recommend is just do something low stakes. Just go in and do something fun. I often will create a page that's based on hobbies. So maybe you have something in your house that you want to track, or like, for example, I knit and I have knitting patterns. So I created a database that has my knitting patterns in them and I can tag them the way they want and whatnot. So that is one of the things that you can absolutely do. Okay, what else do we have here? And we said, Pellinor, I hope I'm saying that right. I've got my contact database in Obsidian, and it's an ongoing process of refining it and getting rid of the friction. I love to hear that because that's part of the friction principle. When you notice that it's not working for you, then change it as quickly as you can. And I'm guilty, as anyone else is, of sometimes we'll let something bother us for a while before we actually make any changes to it. And yeah, also Kyle, typos increase by 300% when you're on a shared screen. I believe so. Okay. Yes. Okay. This is AI. So Copilot's one example. Also, Chat GPT, and there's Notion AI that's built in. You do have to pay for it. They also can help, although I haven't done a lot of testing. I'm going to be honest. If I stick to my simplicity principle, I only put a formula in place when I really need one. I think there are some people who will add things to a database because they can, not because it actually serves them best. And this can happen when someone's getting really into Notion for the first time and they learn all the things it can do and they get very excited. And then it becomes it almost takes on a life of its own and they spend more time working on Notion than actually using Notion. So I just really want to reinforce, just start with what you need. The other thing, this is another principle that I have. Let's put this, so a couple things. This principle, start with good enough. A lot of people will not start using Notion until it's exactly how maybe someone else did it or until it's perfect. Don't. Start with the basics that can help you create some views and custom views, but just start with good enough and then start using it. The other one is what I call focus forward. And this idea is just start today onwards. That can paralyze people as well. And let's actually go step away from the screen for a moment and remember that if you are thinking of using another tool, people will hesitate because they think, oh, I've got 3 years of content. I've got 5 years of content. How am I ever going to transport everything over? Or maybe you are also using Notion for projects and you think, oh, I need to port all of my old projects and tasks. Just the active ones. Just put the active ones you're working on, put the active content you're working on. Maybe you want to import your ideas, but you do not have to leave everything else where it is right now. You can always go back and find it. And if later it makes sense for you to bring it in, fine, but just start with today and then move forward. It doesn't have to be a big deal. So that's my focus forward. And then let's just do another one because I'm on here. So the commitment principle is you're not getting married. Just date. Just try something, see if you like it. You can always change it. And with Notion, you can actually, I have so many, there are databases where I have, I think, over 30 deleted properties that I just tried and I realized these aren't great. So this is not a huge commitment. So just don't worry about it. So that's the commitment, the commitment principle, if you will. Okay, let's go back to the demo and talk a little bit about the views. So I have this table view that I called it ideas. So this is filtered. We have the YouTube view, and let's just update this. So because I want it to match the other one, I can simply click on the template at the bottom. It will not change the title. It will update the icon, however. Now, what happens if this is an important point, what happens if you collected an idea and maybe your idea was, let's say, I don't know, just say yarn storage, and you opened this page and you were so excited and you just said, let's talk about humidity and let's talk about airflow and yarn size. I don't know. So you've got these ideas here and then you think, oh, I didn't apply my template, but now I can't see the templates. How do I get them back? This is where you have to trust yourself and you're going to cut and paste. So I like to put my cursor to the left of this side here and just drag over all of the blocks, which if you are brand new to Notion, each one of these that as I drag, you can see that there's a little, oh, here's some instructions, by the way. These are all individual blocks. These are just text blocks, but I can move these around if I want to. For right now, I'm actually going to cut and then paste. So if I say on a Mac, I'm doing Command X. Now that everything's clear, I can see the templates again. So I can choose the template and then my cursor is back here and I can say Command Paste and they are back again. So that is how you can that's how you can apply a template after you've already gathered some information in your page. The other thing, though, when we're talking about templates is that maybe you want to have some page setup or page structure to help you make your content. So if I am creating a YouTube video, let's open this YouTube. Now, if I click on it, it's going to create a new page. But if I go over here to the 3 dots and say edit this template, then I can click on edit. Now there are a few other options. I showed you before, you can duplicate a template. So if I maybe wanted to have a recorded video and a live stream video, I could have 2 different templates for that. And then we also have the option, set this as default. So if I'm on my YouTube page, which I am, I can actually click set as default and it will say, do you want every view of your content database to be default to YouTube? No. only this YouTube view is where I want that to be the default. So I will say yes to this. And let's actually pause and see what that means. So if I say new page, it's automatically the template. If I click away, you'll see it's got the emoji, it's got YouTube video, but I have to then update the name. So here I'll just change the name for my new video. And this one will be, let's say, ribbing on sweaters. This is fun to just make up random content about my hobby. Okay. The other thing though, is that maybe you want to have some structure on the page. So let's go and edit the template. And it says you are editing a template, and you can learn a little bit more about templates. Let's make this full page. And here on the bottom, this is where you can start to create some structure. Again, if we want to consider simplicity, start as simple as possible, but no simpler. So if there are just some things that you like to do for your video every single time, so maybe you like to have a section called brainstorm. So this is where let's talk a little bit about blocks. And if you do the slash, which it says write something or press space for AI or slash for command. So if I say slash, I have this now, all these blocks that are available to me, including some headings, including a simple table, bulleted list, toggle, divider, all these sorts of blocks that you can have. And let's just start with a basic, we'll just do heading 2. And maybe we want to just have a little section for brainstorm. Maybe this is where we generate ideas. And I like dividers under my titles sometimes. So you can say slash divider to create a divider. Or we'll do one more. Let's say, and here's if you want a header, you can do, what do we call that? Hashtag or pound. And then if you do it once, it will get you, and space, it's heading 1. If I go back, do this twice, spacebar, heading 2. So let's say one called title ideas. And then another hint for a divider is if you do dash, 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 then you get this here. So maybe I also want to add, if I do a dash space, that's just a bullet. And we can say title ideas dash space. This is really, really basic. And you can get really advanced with your templates. But as I said, just start simple, start with good enough, and just what would you want to have? Maybe you are someone, we'll put a new block here. Maybe you're someone who likes to write scripts. So we're going to do hashtag, hashtag space for my title 2 again. And maybe you have a script section. So this is where we're just setting up a page based on what you do every time you make a video. And this is a very basic template, but I just want to start with basic. If we take a look, for example, this over here in this bar, I actually have today's stream. So if we look at today's stream, it looks a little different. So first of all, I have used what's called the customized layout. So the layout itself has these different groupings, which is a new thing. Also, I have media in a separate area. So it's actually, I guess I could change this to published because it's now public. And I have some groupings for its how-to, its Notion. We've got my thumbnail is attached here. And now with this view, I can see it this way instead of the teeny tiny. And then when I do a live stream, I have some steps that I take over and over and over again. So this is in my template so that I can confirm these, write the outline, prepare my assets, load the things into Ecamm, update my Stream Deck. All of this stuff is things I repeat. So I also have these in my template. And then I also have this live checklist, which I went through today before I went live, and have things like turn off notifications, go into do not disturb mode, test my camera, everything. I also have some more advanced things, and I'm just showing you to see an example where I like to say, what other content do I have that's connected to this? And if your brain is breaking because you're brand new, don't worry, maybe just look away. And this is where I can see, okay, I had a LinkedIn post yesterday that was posted here. I also, I didn't put a date. So I also sent out an email yesterday. So I've got the type of content that it was, but this is actually related. So you can actually see below that this LinkedIn post is related to my YouTube video. I also have it related here. It's even in the title. So it says newsletter dash, and then it's got the name of the video today. But then I also have kind of this outline that I kind of just roughly, it's nothing fancy, but I do have an outline. I don't want to give it all away. And lower below that, I also have ideas. So this is an example of a template that gets a little bit more advanced depending on how you use it. And I have a different template. So this is just YouTube general. So I have a YouTube live stream, but I also have a YouTube recorded video because those are different. And I want to I have different workflows when I do a live stream versus when I do a recorded video. So I have different templates. Okay, gonna do a little check-in. Hopefully I didn't break anyone's brain here. And I'll go back to my content database and do a little check-in with with what is in here. Yeah. Good enough for mediocrities. Love it. So Dan is saying the reason we went all in on Notion years ago, one word, flexibility. Yes. It's everything from a CRM, client portal, content development, publishing, etc. So this, I think that for me, I totally agree. I love how flexible and also customizable I can change the language, etc. It still has some structure embedded in it. I'm not changing the foundation of what it means to build a database, but you can really customize this based on how you work. Templates are a great example of that. The properties that you set up and the language you use for the different properties is another really good example of that flexibility. And you can do so much more. Today, I'm just focusing on content, but there are so many more things you can do with it. And I love it for so many reasons. And then yes, it does use Markdown. And let's see, and Carrie's just saying, what are you using for side-by-side and overlays? So today this is a very simple setup where I'm primarily using Ecamm because I'm showing my screen, but I do actually have a scene set up. I've got my iPad here. So if I just in case I wanted to draw, like if I wanted to talk about having, a database here, a database here. So let's actually do an example and let's add so to answer your question, this is through the Rodecaster video, but let's just do an example here where with my iPad, this is maybe your content database. And maybe you're someone who has guests. Maybe you have a podcast and you have guests. So let's say that this is your guests database. They have different properties. So you wouldn't put your guests in your content database because they're not content ideas, but they could be connected to each other. So you might actually connect your content to your guests, and it's probably good to have it go in both directions where you have a database with your guests. Now, another example when you're starting to think about how you'll use this is that maybe you are someone who has maybe another database, and this one is sponsors. If you're someone who, ooh, that's ugly writing, someone who has sponsors that you are also keeping in touch with, okay, what's going to happen between these two databases? Because you also want to know which content is sponsored and by whom. So you can really start to set that up. So this is my drawing scene in case you're wondering. But for this is just, oh, we've got the comment. This is just using, so this is Ecamm. I'm using Ecamm to stream, but I do have my Rodecaster with my iPad in case I needed to draw. All right, and I see that we also have, we've got, speaking of Ecamm, we have Doc. Hello, Doc, it's so nice to see you. Okay. And, oh, okay. Eden, are you actually building? Well, are we building together? That is my question. So we talked about relations. So, and maybe you didn't know we talked about relations. So on this iPad view here, this is an example of relations between databases. So if I wanted to have content and I want to have guests, I want to have sponsors. Also, maybe actually while we've got this open, another example is that you might be someone who likes to track your tasks in Notion. So you might also, let's just draw another box here. These are all slightly different sizes. And this one is going to be maybe your task database. And these are also connected to your task, maybe. So you get to decide what works for you. And you might not be someone who actually wants to write all of your tasks in there or not. And that is completely up to you. There's so many ways, by the way, that you can connect your information. But you can have, these are called relations. So you can relate two databases together, like content and tasks, like content and guests, and content and sponsors. That would be relating between databases, but you can also have relations within a database. So maybe you have content that is connected. So when I showed my example before, if we go back here to this today's post, and I actually have a little category called related. So I've got the newsletter and the LinkedIn post. And I also down on this page, if we scroll down further, you saw here that I have it's a filter. This is a view of my content database, and it's filtered to say, show me any LinkedIn posts, company posts, blog posts, etc., that are related to this video that I have here today. So let's take a look. Let's just rewind in case your brain is breaking. And let's talk about having the relation option within a database. So you might have what you call parent, or sometimes hub and spoke is the term that I've been using, where actually let's go back to the iPad for a second. I'm doing this. I sound like a child. It's their first day using an iPad. So when it comes to content, let's just do a fresh page here. If you're someone who makes, say, long form content, maybe you have a podcast, maybe you have a YouTube video that you make, and this is your sort of main content. And so this is your parent content, or you might call this your hub content. And wow, this writing is terrible. Okay. And then spoke. So I learned about this through Justin Welsh. I'm sure other people have talked about this, but the idea is that you then have sort of content that's coming off the sides. So maybe you also have an accompanying blog about this content. Maybe you also have an Instagram post. Maybe you are on LinkedIn, or maybe you're on Facebook, Twitter, whatever it is. This is considered your spoke content. And so this is like the idea of a parent and child relationship. Now that's different than, say, related content, where maybe you just have another piece of content. We'll just do a dashed line. That's just very similar. Oh, I'm doing the dashed line in the wrong direction. And we'll just say this is maybe another piece of main content, and it's just, so we'll say MC. It's another piece of main content, and this is connected, but it is not actually the parent-child relationship or the spoke and hub relationship. So in this case, we have two different types of relationships. So let's do an example here. So let's just say that I just want to keep track of which videos are closely related, because maybe when I am writing my description, I will want to link to that content. And we will click plus and add another property. And you can start to type the word relation if you like to, or we can just scroll down this list until we see relation property. And it says here that this little helpful guide, connect databases or mention database pages. It's useful for connecting items across your workspace. Here is where you get to decide, am I going to link this to another database like tasks, or is this going to be inside a relationship? And there's this little I here that says this database. Do you want to have a relation in this database? And if we click yes, then what do we want to call this? So I like, maybe we'll just say related content, which is a totally valid thing to call it. And do you want this to go in separate directions? So this separate directions is more of a parent task, or having that hub and spoke. I don't want to do that. I just want them to be connected. So I say this video is kind of similar. I want to talk about these two things together. So I'm going to leave this off. You can limit it to, is there only one option? In this case, no, I could have maybe a few videos that are connected. So as you can see here, these are just two pieces of content that are related to each other. It's that dashed line that I showed on the iPad. So let's add the relation. So what will happen here, maybe let's hide. We're just going to hide this property for a moment. So if I just click on the title and click hide, it just cleans it up a little bit. If I say that I want to have the yarn one about wool versus synthetic also connected to yarn storage, I'll just say, click in here. It brings up this, it's the picker. So this has all the other pages that are in this database. And I can just find the one I'm looking for. And in this case, it's yarn storage. The other thing though, is if you're looking at this and you want some more information, you can click on these three dots. You can customize which properties you see. So maybe if I wanted to see the date, or in this case, perhaps I want to see the other topics, that might help me with relating my content. And so you can see the topics right now. And I know that, okay, this is also related. So even though it's not a YouTube video, it might be related. So I will click on cleaning smelly wool. And also yarn storage wasn't tagged properly. So let's just go here, do that really quickly. Yarn. And then this is on, I'll call this stitches. So now these are related and you'll see that it updated. So the yarn storage updated. And while I cannot see the blog post here, if I go into this other view and I scroll over, I can see that it has updated across the other ones. So I can just see, okay, which content is related to each other. So that is it's not a parent task. This is just kind of, they're similar. So they're related to each other. So now let's consider the other example, which is where it's more of a parent-child situation or the hub and spoke. If we go back to this picture, where you've got your main content and then you have the related content that is connected to it. And in that case, that's where we want that parent-child. There's sort of two ways to go about this. And I'm just going to create, just for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to remove this filter so that it doesn't, I just don't want it to mess with anything. And we are going to click on these three dots. So the three dots beside the new, that is your database menu where you can do customization. And here you will see, so let's just kind of go through this quickly because I didn't really. Layout, this is where you can change the different layout to the different parts that you saw before. Board view, timeline, calendar, list, gallery, chart. You also can add a filter. You can sort your information. For example, by date might be a way you want to see it. You can group your information. So we saw that example where we had the different topics. Everything was grouped into those topics. You can add automations, although I think that's only on the paid plan, so we're not going to do that in this workspace. And then there's customized content. So if we click on this, now we can see a little bit more like sub-items, dependencies, tasks. That's a separate, we won't worry about that. And then there's a summary. So if I click add sub-items, it will sort of do it for me. And here you can see there's a little window that shows up and means that there are going to be parent tasks and sub-tasks. Or if we think about hub content and spoke content or parent and child. So let's click add, turn on. Now sub-items are turned on. This has changed the look. And I believe that you can say show them nested as toggle, show parents only, or show a flattened list. We'll start with this nested in the toggle. And if you click on advanced settings, you can actually adjust these properties. So if I already had set up, maybe I called my own things hub and spoke, then I could actually go in and actually choose those instead, because when you turn on sub items, it just creates parent item and sub item on you, which I don't love, but I'm showing you this way because this is sort of the way that Notion has set it up. But you can do some, and you can, the nesting toggle title, you can adjust those. If you're confused, don't worry. Let's hide some things for a moment just to make this a little bit cleaner. So I'll hide that. Also, if you ever want a quicker way to hide a lot of properties, we can go back to this three-dot menu, click on properties, and you can actually just hide some things. So if I just for now want to hide the category and the topic, we can do that. And we can always come back and show them. I do want to turn the parent item and sub item on, and we're going to edit them. I have two options. I can click on this and say edit property, or here, when I'm clicked on properties, I can actually click on this little arrow here and I can edit it here. So you can get at it more than one way. In this example, I'm just going to use the language that I've been using, but you can do whatever you want. So I might say hub, and the other one, I can actually change it here and I'll call it spoke. And I'm going to update the relation. And you can see here that it's showing you the diagram of it, and I'll update the relation. So now we've got hub content and spoke content. And you can see toggles. Now, none of these actually have any content, so all of these are empty. So right now, a toggle will just open nothing, but you can add a sub item. So let's say that I have this fall projects, and I have a couple of options. I could go here and start clicking content here in the spoke, or I can use this toggle and just say add new sub item. So maybe I want to have an Instagram post that is showing one of my finished projects. So I might say, or like first finished fall 2024 project. And this one, it doesn't have, excuse me, it doesn't have anything applied, but if I open this page, I can see that it's connected to this main content and a I can apply a template. So here I am saying that this is an Instagram post that is connected to this project. Maybe I also want to do a reel to go with it. Maybe the reel will be showing the project progress. I would be more specific probably. Again, we can open this and this is going to be a reel and I can start to see this. And maybe I want to have a blog post as well. So I'll say that I'll have a fall 2024 project. I could say blog also, or once I apply the template, it'll be a little bit more obvious that this is a blog. So I now have all of these sub items are related to this project. You can see it over here. And if I open this page, you can see what is all the spoke content or the related content. And that is how I did have that in my space as well, so that when I am looking at the linked projects, and I'll show you an example. So let's close this here and go into my workspace. And I have a hub spoke view. Let's take a look at this one here. So this is in September. If I toggle this down, I can see that I had multiple pieces of spoke content. So I actually, this is not done. I did not do the blog. I wanted to do the blog and I may still do the blog. And this one, I think I actually did do. So that was just not me updating it. So let's say published because there's a link. This one also, I don't have a link. So by the way, I'm not perfect. But I had a post on the 10th, the 11th, the 13th, the 13th. And if there's a link, it usually means it's published, or sometimes I don't grab the link each time. But for these I did, and I can click on the link and see the post itself. But all of these are related to that week I did that video. So I had some related posts. And if I open it up and say, maybe, I think, did I have something here? Sometimes I'll draft it. No, I didn't draft it here. Did I draft this one? So here, I just kind of picked what are the pictures I'm going to show for my Studio Evolution update. And so I put that. So you can draft ideas in here. So this is an example of having that content that is in the hub and spoke or parent child or whatever you like to call it. You can use the language. Please do use the language you like. I also sometimes find this to be a little bit overwhelming. And so sometimes I would maybe hide these from me. And this is also, because of this view, I'm only seeing this content tucked away. And I might not want that. I might actually want to see all of my content and not see them toggled like this. So in this view, I have them tucked. I'm basically showing those parent items. But if I want to change that, let's go back to the menu and go into the customize, go into the sub items. And this is where we can get advanced, or we can say nested parents only. Let's do flatten list. So flatten list now is just showing everything, but the flatten list will show you the parent content or the hub content in the title. So now I see everything in one list. I don't have the toggles. So depending on the view that you like, this is where you can get to decide how do you actually want to see your information. Okay, I'm going to do a check into the comments, just see, is there anything we have here? And also, so nice to see you, Matt. Thanks for joining. Okay, let's see. Also love to see that Eden is adjusting as we go along. Okay, question here from Rich. Can you publish or execute tasks from within Notion? Post to IG, LinkedIn, etc. So I directly, no, I don't believe any of the automations have publishing. If you were using a third-party app like Zapier, Make, etc., then I do believe that you can trigger. So there's something changing, you can trigger things to post. Personally, I like to have a little bit of friction between those because it is easy to accidentally change. Let's say you change a status and just say, okay, it's ready to publish. And then that actually, pushes something out there. First of all, Notion was not designed to be a social media manager publisher. There are a lot of programs that are built specifically for that. But I do think you could use third-party tools. I haven't done it. I like a little bit of separation personally, but if anyone else has experience, let me know. And Can't relate to yarn. Yeah, my examples might be completely like, this is not helpful for you, but the idea, I actually like using a completely unrelated content topic because it's it doesn't matter what your topic is. The idea is how do I like to organize my information? How do I like to see my information? And so, yeah, basic automation. Okay, so there are some basic automations, buttons, Slack, and sprints. So let's actually show a couple of examples. And oh, also just when it comes to the paid plan. So I do have the paid plan as the individual plan. So I do not have any extra members in my space. I do have some guests that are in my space. I like having the paid plan for part of its peace of mind. So if I delete something, it saves the history longer. So if I need to bring something back, I'm sort of paying for that assurance. And also, you do have access to automation. You can have more guests in your space if you want to. And guests will just only see, so they would essentially be able to sign into your workspace, but only into the pages that you've given them access. But you can have them be able to edit things or add things, maybe just view. So you get to choose their permission level. Members is really for teams. So if you are working with a team in Notion Workspace, I do think paying for members is the better way to go. You can just get more nuanced when it comes to permissions with that kind of thing. And I'm gonna change, I need a sip of water. So I'm gonna change this screen for a second while I take a sip of water. And if there are any other questions, please throw them in. I'd love to answer some more questions as well. Okay, got my hydration. So I do want to show you about linked databases. And because I gave you an example in my content and you just might not have had the context. So this is an example of a simple content database. We have a couple different views. And let's just do one more example of a view, but let's do a board view. And maybe this is an Instagram view. So I'll say edit view. And let's just call this Instagram, where we will filter and say, only show me content type that is either a reel or a post. There we go. And now everything right now is an idea. I don't have anything that's not an idea, but if I go to my menu and I click on my group, which is all the groups across the top, that's your main group, I can actually show more of them. So I could show, let's show the next up, maybe because it's Instagram, I might do some preparation, ready to film, ready to edit. Let's just show, I'm just gonna show these. And so I can decide what do I want to see and also in what order. So if you want to sort, you can sort in ascending. You can also have a manual order if you want to play around with these orders. You could also even, this is sorting by option. You could also sort by group. If I did that, it would just look like to do, in progress, complete. And that might actually be more appealing to some people. I like to have the specificity of the option. And so now I'm going to do this again where I say next up, prep, ready to film, ready to edit, publish, and we'll say published. And if you can't see all of these on the screen, you can also adjust the width. So if I click on this menu again for my database and go into layout, because I want to adjust the layout, I can say that I'd like the card size to be small instead of medium. That will get the width a little bit better. Also, I'm really zoomed in. So on your page, you probably won't be seeing all of that. So if I have this Instagram, didn't I have more than that? I thought I had more. I see 3, 4. Why am I not seeing all of them? This is an interesting question. Is this because of, is this because of this? Let's go here. Where is, there we go. So this is where sub items can be a bit of a pain. And so keep in mind, if you can't see everything, maybe that would be worth looking into. And also, do I need sub items or not? You might not. Okay, we've got 4 different ideas, but if I say, oh, you know what, I'm gonna work on this one next, I can just drag these over. Maybe I'm preparing this video so I can see my view of all my Instagram content in the way that I want. So this is just creating a view, but you are not limited to only having views of your database on this database page. You can also have them on other pages. So let's say that I want to create a new blank page that is maybe an idea capture for Instagram. So we're going to call this an Instagram idea page. We'll call it Instagram ideas. And remember, because of this custom icon, I can just click on Instagram. And if you are joining us later, you can see how you can add custom emojis to your account. That looks really big. Anyway, maybe I need to adjust the pixels. This is just a blank page. So I can add things to it, and maybe I want to have something at the top of the page. So I did this really quickly. We're gonna do a slash. I would like a call out box, which is just one of the formats for having a block of text stand out. So I'll click call out box, and it's just defaulted to purple. I think I was using that recently. And here I can say, a place to collect ideas for my Instagram account. You don't have to do this. You don't have to put any of that, but it's just an example of what you can do on the page. So on this page though, maybe I want to see those Instagram ideas, and you can use the slash and start to write the word linked. And when you do that, write the word linked, you will see the option of I want to add a linked view of a database. So if I click on this, now it says, what database do you want to show? I was just working on content 2.0, so we are going to choose content 2.0. And this is showing all of them, but it says, do you want to see one of these existing views? Maybe I want to see this Instagram view. Maybe I want to have a new view. Let's just click this Instagram view here that I've already set up. So I'm just copying a view I already made, and I can name it Instagram, or I can change it, and maybe I just call it IG Ideas is the name of it. And it's already got a filter on it, so I don't have to worry about that. And it's got some groupings. Maybe I actually want to do a subgroup of having my reels and my posts separate. So let's add a subgroup, and I actually don't know if I can do that. No, wait, yeah, content type. Yes, post and reel. Had a little bit of a brain blip there for a moment. So only these two, and we'll just close this for now. This is the title of the database. And if I click on this, it'll take me to the database, which is a nice shortcut, but sometimes I just like to be clean. So let's hide the database title. We've got Instagram ideas up here. And you can also, when you edit the view, you can change the icon. So maybe I want this to be a light bulb. And if I don't see that, I used light bulb recently, you can search for it. And so we've got this little light bulb, and maybe I want the light bulb. No, you can't make colors on the views. This will always be that color. So I've got this little view here called Instagram Ideas, but maybe you actually don't want to see, maybe I don't actually like the board view for my ideas. Maybe I just want something simpler, and that's okay. I can just change this layout and say, I don't want this layout. I want the filters, but I don't want this layout. Maybe you want something cleaner, like a list. And let's just close that. So now I've got this page for my Instagram ideas. I am going to change this to pink because I am obsessed with stuff like that. And we're going to change this to, and maybe we'll actually pick this idea, and this can be a color. So you can just see how you can start to customize this page. This is the database. It's a linked view of the database. And if I want to say, oh, I've got an idea for a reel, first, let's also remember the template. We have a template. So this is not ideal to create a default view if you were doing reels and posts, because if you make one the default, they will always go to one or the other. So you could also separate this. So this is one way where I would actually leave it as empty for the default, but maybe I want to have another option, which is just a view. So let's do duplicate. So we'll say IG Reel Ideas. And in this one, I'm going to remove the subgroup or the group that we've got here. So let's actually just say group by none. So I'm just taking that away. I am going to instead filter this to only reels. And I'm going to say that I want this to be the default only for this reels view. Now, anytime I add anything new to this, it is going to be in that view. So if I add a new page or new idea, I just kind of double click this to write over it. And so now I have another reel, which is maybe just how I organize patterns. So I've got a new one there. And if I click Shift Enter, oh, does that work on the? No, That's in a table view. Never mind. In a table view, Shift Enter will just do another one. Let's actually do an example of that. I'm going to create another one, and we are going to say IG post ideas. So let's duplicate this. This one will be post ideas. And we will change the filter to be posts. And we will also change the layout to a table. So I can show you what I was talking about with the table. So we've got the table view. Let's clean up the properties though, so that they're a little bit cleaner. So I'm gonna hide the related content. If this is just idea generation, I can hide the date. I'm gonna hide the content type. I can also just hide the status if I want to, or I can leave that. It's totally up to you, but let's just keep it with these four things. You can also make it a little cleaner and it looks more like a table or more like a list. So I think under your layout, you can say show vertical lines. So I could hide that if I want it to be slightly cleaner. And also, if you ever wanted to, which in this example I don't, but you can toggle on and off page icons. So if you're someone who has a lot of haphazard icons in your space, you can actually tuck them away just by saying, don't show me the page, it'll only be text, which can really help clean up some of the pages. So I just wanna throw that out there. In this example, let's set the default here. Instead of real, we actually want this to be the default for the post ideas. So now we have a couple different ones. I'm gonna rename this and say, well, no, we'll keep this one here. So we've got real ideas, post ideas, and here, if I click new page, highlight this to duplicate. If you're ever generating a lot in a row directly into the database, then this is where what I was trying to do with the list that didn't work. So maybe I want to have a post that is my favorite Stitch. I'm really struggling to come up with stuff. Now that it's highlighted, if I press Shift Enter, it starts a new one, but it's highlighted. So if I just press backspace, it deletes the title. So if you are using a default template, sometimes it's annoying to have to highlight the page. So I'm gonna do a couple of these to show you. So maybe I have one favorite Stitch or next season's knits. I'm going to Shift Enter, backspace, and then I can just write again. So this is just a really nice way to be adding a bunch of things, generating those ideas, and maybe I'll just say, choosing a pattern. So here we go. And then if I want to, and I say that this is, about stitches, this one's about patterns, I can just kind of quickly update that. Table view is a really nice way to update things just like a spreadsheet. So I just want you to know that one is, do I have one for, this could be related to patterns, whatever. So you can update these. And again, if you're looking at that and say, I don't want to update topics, categories, don't. This is where we want to use simplicity, as simple as possible, but no simpler. Okay, I'm gonna look back. I don't think are there any other questions here? Oh, hi, Kathy, it's nice to see you. Okay, and I see, okay, it's not on my screen yet, but I do see that there is a comment of great tips. I'm glad that's helpful. So this is the reason I show you this. This is a linked view of a database. It means that I am seeing a view of this content database in a totally separate page in my workspace. This is just a regular standard page that I have here on the side. And that's just a good example of how I can pull in some databases. So if I want to see a YouTube page and just see all my YouTube ideas, or maybe I want to see a calendar of my YouTube, I can do that. I can have those different pages set up. But this also means that on an actual content, a database page, we can also have a linked view. So if we go back to our content 2.0, and let's actually give this I'm going to just give it this button so it looks consistent in the side. I would probably also update the Instagram ideas on the sidebar. That drives me a little, I like mine to be pretty consistent. Okay, so we've got our content database. And we have an example here with the fall 2024. If we open this page and we look at this page, we have some spoke content, meaning that there are some other pieces of content that are related. So maybe I want to see a linked view of all my spoke content or child content on the page itself, which you saw an example in my workspace, but I want to show you how you would set that up. So let's open this to the full page and just look at this project page. And this is not, I right now don't have, I think actually, did I add that to the YouTube content? I did. I have brainstorms, title, script, and maybe down on this page, I want to create a linked view. So we're going to do that again. And this time we write linked, add a linked view, and we want this to be the content 2.0 database. Right now, I'm going to start with a fresh view instead of taking another view. So we'll say it's a new view. This one, I'm going to call this spoke content. You can call it whatever you want, but we'll call that spoke content. And say, and we also, I'm going to hide the database title. Maybe you also want to hide the lines, totally up to you, and say done. But we want to add a filter. And the filter is that we want things where the hub content is the name of this video, which is fall 2024. So show me any of the content where the hub or the parent is fall 2024. Once we've done that, now this filter is only showing us these. Now this is where that sub items is kind of awkward, and I am going to turn that off. So let's go under customize content, sub items, and please don't let this completely turn you off of using Notion by saying, oh, the sub items is kind of annoying. But we are going to just do this flattened list again and have that set up. And I'm going to show you how you don't have to keep repeating this every single time you want that. So let's say here, now we have this view of a database that is just showing what is the spoke content for this video. So this is my fall 2024 project, and I just created a linked view on the page just for that. You can see here with Hub that all of them say fall 2024. Now that's probably unnecessary, so let's clean this up a little bit. I am going to click on properties, and I'm just going to hide related content and Hub content for now to keep it really simple. And even because I can see what type of content it is with the visual, I can hide that as well. What I might want to do though is show the date of it, and maybe I also want to show the URL that I have so that when these are actually posted, like you saw in my example, then you can quickly access the URL, you can see the date they were published. And so I'm just customizing this view and asking myself, what do I want to see? Which is actually another principle that I haven't shown yet. This is my visibility principle, show and hide with intention. And this is also, I would say, connected to the context principle. So let's show the context principle, let context drive the design. What am I going to use this list for? What do I want to be able to change? And so I think with both of those, what you hide is just as important as what you show. So in this example, I'm just being very intentional about what properties do I want to see when I'm looking at this. Also, if you want more space on your page, you can click on the top 3 dots in the corner. This is your page menu. And when you do that, you could say, I would like this to be full width, please. And then you will actually cross the full width here. Now, if you think, I don't know if I want my brainstorm and title ideas to be all the way across, you can actually create columns. And there are 2 ways you can create columns. Now I'm talking about the layout of the page, but just bear with me. If I highlight these 3 and I want to drag these over beside, let's say the brainstorm, I can actually just drag them over until I see this horizontal blue line. Drop that line. I've just created 2 columns, and then I can just select these by dragging over them. I'm selecting the divider and the bullet block, and I'm just dragging them under brainstorm. So now I've got brainstorm title ideas here. There is another way to do that. Let's do an example down here on this blank part of the page. If I say slash and then start to write columns, you can also choose columns and pick 2, 3, 4, and you can create columns on your page. Maybe I wanted to have 3 columns here, and perhaps this one, let's do a smaller title, and I can call this B-roll for your video. And then in this column here, I might say, description. I'm totally making things up. And actually, let's move description over. I'm going to highlight this, move description over here. Hopefully I just messed with my columns. Let's go back. I'm just going to undo. I'm going to change this and just say, let's say assets. Maybe I need to create some images, and then maybe here. I'm going to create another one that just is called description for my video, and then have that little space. So that's an example also of how you can create columns. So I want to show you that there. And I see there's some questions coming in, so take a little stopover and answer a couple of the questions. So let's see here. We've got, okay, let's see. Can Notion store all of your associated media for each project? Is it a good choice? This is a great question. You could have a footage database that is connected to your content. So maybe you have a content database, maybe you have a footage database. So if you have a lot of B-roll and other footage, you could actually store that. Maybe say, which external memory card is this stored on? What is the location that I showed this? If you're someone who really needs to keep that organized, and maybe you do that on a spreadsheet, and that would be one way, but you could do it in Notion. So I could actually have a relation and say, for this video, what is the footage that I'm using for this? And so you can actually attach it. So in this example on this page, I just wrote a section for B-roll, but I could actually have a B-roll database where I can track the status of the B-roll, where that B-roll is stored. So you could do that. Remember though, that is extra work. It might be very worth it for you depending on your workflows and how much storage you have. So if you want to keep it organized, I think having a database of all your footage could actually be a really great option. And then I see, what is the name of the software? So, and Kyle already answered that. So it's Notion. And yes, it is. There is a free plan for Notion if you're looking to use Notion. So over here, let's get back. Let's get back on track. And this example now is that we have this project. This is a video, a YouTube video, and I've got my properties up here. And down on this page, I have some sections for brainstorming, and then I also have this section here. The other thing is everything that is a block is movable. So if I wanted to see this spoke content higher up, I can actually just drag it and use that blue line as a guide. Maybe I just want to have that dropped at the top here. I can do that so that it's at the top of the page. And then maybe all of my other brainstorming and everything else is down here. If I like this idea of always showing my related content on the page or my sub items, then I can actually set this up once in the template and then have that show up over and over and over again. So let's do an example where we go back to our content database. We click here on YouTube video, and I can edit this template and say edit. And remember, this is just applicable if you are someone who likes to have related content, say to your video or to whatever else your main content is. Maybe you're a podcast, but then you want to promote your podcast on everything else. So let's create this linked view, and I'm going to have it above brainstorm. Here's a little tip. If you hover over the block, the top block, which here is this title brainstorm, it says click to open menu. And if I hover over the plus, if you click it, it'll add a block below. But if you say option click, that's for a Mac, then it might be alt click, then it will add it above. So here we've got that little menu popped up, and I want to type linked again. And now we are going to do the same thing, except this time it's for the template. So we're going to relate this to the template. So let's say new table. We're repeating what we did last time. And, oh, actually, I made a mistake. I did not mean to make a new table. Let's actually delete that and start over again. We are going to do option. So we created a block above, linked 2.0. There we go. We want content 2.0. And I'm just going to have a new view, not a new database, a new view. And this view, let's do the table. We can hide the database title. We can toggle that off, say done, filter. So this is where we want to filter so that that hub content is going to be whatever the name of the title is. And this is what we call a self-referencing template. And so we are going to say that hub is going to be this template. And now here, remember those square brackets that I put around the name of the template? That's because it makes it really easy for me. When I see a list of all the pages, I immediately know which one is a template and which one isn't. Obviously, if you just saw a YouTube video, you might know that it's not the name of a real video, but this is why I like to use square brackets. So I'll click on YouTube video, and this is now connected to the template itself. So I've got it filtered to show the template. Let's also clean up some of the stuff that we didn't like before. So I remember that if we customize that sub items, I want this to be show as flattened list. I just want the list here. So we're going to do that right away. And then I'm also going to click on my properties and just remember which ones do I want to see and which ones do I not. And that is what we call the visibility principle. What do we want to see? What do we want to hide? And in this case, I'm going to hide the hub content because we know it's related to this video. I can hide the related content. I can hide the content type because I can tell just by looking at the icon. And I want to keep the status. I'd like to show the date. I'd like to show the URL. Maybe you want to have the topics as well, but you don't have to. And we are going to, I think that is good. We can also adjust the sizing of this if we want to and have that set up the way we like. So on this page, we have the table at the top with all the related content. Let's rename this actually. And we can say this spoke, sub items, whatever you want to call this. It's totally up to you. And you could also, I think in mine, I had an example of a list like this. So it's just, it kind of makes, it reminds me that this is what this is. These are my sub items for this list. Now the template is all set up for us. So let's make a new video. I am going to add a new page, and this is going to be a new video, and this is going to be called How I Got Started. And let's actually fill out a little bit of, no, we'll just open it. We'll apply the YouTube video template. Now, when we apply this YouTube video template, we can see that there is this section for spoke content. Now, I just created this video and I don't have any content that's already in there, and that's completely fine. I can actually create it from this page. So maybe let's go just full page and say that I'm working on this video. So we'll say that this is a behind the scenes, and maybe this is just, do I have one at beginners? And down here, I can actually just create things in here. So maybe I know that I am going to do a post about first project. I'll say first knitting project. And I can open this page and say that this is going to be a post. I'll close that page. Maybe I'm also going to do a reel, which will be, maybe it's a clip. And so here's the other thing. In the title, I can reference the other video if I want to. So I could say, clip of, let's mention the page. So I can either use an @ symbol, and the @ symbol will pull up any of the pages or any of the people in the workspace or a date. Or if you know you're going to reference a page, you can also do open square bracket twice, and that will just show you pages first. And so here I know that it's going to be first knitting project. It usually does recent ones. So I'll click that. So now the title of this content is clip of first knitting project. It maybe I don't need to name the reel, but let's open it because I haven't applied a template yet. And I know this is going to be a reel, and it's a clip of the first knitting project. So it doesn't have to be fancy, but if you know you're going to do it, then you can absolutely do that. So this is now, when I look at this page, I can see which content I want here. Are there any? I'd love to know if you have questions about the templates, if I lost you on the linked database view, because I totally understand that for some people you might be saying, I don't know where she just went with that, if it went 1 to 60, but kind of checking in, how are people feeling? And I recognize that we've been on here for a little while, but I do want to show you about the customized layout, but I just want to do a little quick check. I'm also going to grab some water. So I'm going to go to this page for a second. All right. Okay, I'm not seeing any, but let's keep going. I can see that people are still with me. The layout. So we are on a database page, and you can see a new feature that just got launched a week ago. And this is where you can customize the layout of your page. Now you saw an example. If we go over to this live built, if we scroll up here, that on my database, you can see that I've got these details here of Details, meaning details of the video, the status, the date, the platform. I have groupings for the categories that I have, and I also have some relations. So you can also see this connected to other things. We're not gonna worry about that right now. And I have my media down here. In our example, I don't have a media property, but maybe we want to add one. Because if you do have, let's say if you're making thumbnails, then you might want to have a thumbnail. So let's add a property first. And this, we can start to type or just scroll down until we see files and media, which is here at the bottom. And I might call this thumbnail. Actually, I'll just leave it as media. You might also have pictures that are associated with your other posts or reels, etc. So we can call that media, and it's here. But how do I get it so that it's down on the other part of the page? Or maybe if I'm using this workspace on my own, I don't need to comment or have a conversation with myself. So we can start to customize the layout. Let's take a look at this button here, customize layout. So this is new. And so I'm still also getting used to it. But a couple of things. One, page discussions. This is that picture of yourself and then the discussions, which is great for a team. If you're talking about a piece of content or you're working together on a project, it's really great to be able to have that discussion. But if I don't need it in this database, let's just turn that off. And then for inline comments, meaning if there's a comment on the page, you can have it with the person's face, or you can set it to minimal. We'll do that. So here, you will see that in the heading, there's an opportunity to pin properties at the top. So if I want to pin a property, when I click on the heading, it says, what do you want to see at the top? Maybe I want to pin the status to the top. Maybe I want to pin the date to the top. I can start to actually create things across the top of what I want to see. I could also put the content type at the top if I want to. So you can start to customize this. Obviously, because it's going across, you can't go crazy. You can't have all the things. You will kind of start to hit a limit. But I do think it's really helpful to show that. Now, backlinks, this would be if there are links to this page in the rest of your workspace. Are they going to show at the top or not? That's up to you, but you can toggle that on or off if you want to. And so now I've set up my heading. Down here now I've got the property group. Let's click on property group, and we could create sections here. So if we look at this page, I have sections. I've got 3 different sections. So this is a very simple, I don't have as many things here, but for example, here I've got 3 different relation categories. So maybe I want to have a section that is called related. I don't know why it's highlighting. This is new to me. Oh wait, no, sorry. I need to add section and then start typing. So we can say related, click done. And then let's add another section, which is, we can call that grouping. I'm just stealing what I did. Do whatever, please. If you have ideas, I'd love to hear what sections would you have in your content to organize your properties. So I've got 2, and let's start to do this. So I'm going to drag this up to grouping, the category, the topic, the relations. I want to have I just don't want the URL. So let's also, you know what, we're going to move the URL somewhere else. So URL and media are the 2 that I actually don't want to be in related, but we're going to move them separately. So first, we've got grouping, which we can toggle open and closed, related. And then at the bottom, we've got these 2, but let's move them. You can actually have a side panel. So if there are things that are related to or that are part of your properties, but you actually don't necessarily want to see them on the page, you can actually have them off to the side. So let's click add to panel, and I want the URL. So we can click on what existing properties do we have. And maybe I just want the link to be off to the side. Maybe I don't, but this is just an example of how you could have it. And then for media, I like to actually have my media. I could have it on the side here. So let's do an example where I have media. So now the media will pop up on the side, but you could also have it down here. If I wanted to have separate, I can click here, and let's say I've got, now media's already moved over. So I can't do media. Maybe I can just drag, can I drag media? Yeah, I can drag it from the side over here. So now I've got the media. So now this is only related content. This is the grouping content. We've got my pinned content at the top, and then we've got our URL to the side. So let's click apply to all pages. And if you're wondering, where'd my sidebar go? It's up here beside share. So I can toggle that open and closed. There is no URL at the moment. And down here, I've got this top bar where I've got the status, which I can change from here, the date, which I can add here, and the type of content, which I can change here. You also have these two sections, the grouping and the related. You can also have things be hidden if you want to. So if you have, let's say you don't want to see related content unless there's something in there, you could say hide when it's empty and then just have that hidden so you can always show it or hide it. So you can start to clean up your space. And then media, if I add something here, so let's actually just add, as an example, I'll just grab a thumbnail. So I'll go over my thumbnail and I'll just pick today's thumbnail. And so this is obviously a demo. This is not for this actual video, but now when I open the page, I can see the name of the video, the status, the date, the content, the media, etc. So that is one way. Let's actually click on customize, see what it looks like on the side. If I wanted to have the media over here, I can drag it to the side, click apply. And so the media doesn't show up here, but when I click on this little side for details, it would have the link and the media on the side here. So that is what this could look like if you start to use the customized layout. I will caution that I don't like, in my experience with it, I don't like having related properties in a separate section. And I'll show you what I mean. So if we go to customize layout and I wanted to have, let's say I wanted to have related content here. And I say apply to all pages. Let's open this little sidebar. The reason I don't like it is because I find this, my instinct is to click new. And when I do that, I'm creating a brand new page in the content database. And sometimes I do that by accident. And if I unlink it, the page is still there. So if I just say unlink page, I still have a blank page that I just added by accident. You can use this little search and it pulls up a page, but that just wasn't my favorite workflow. It doesn't mean it doesn't work. It's just that the way I used to think of the picker is I would click to add an existing page, but instead I was just accidentally adding a lot of other pages. And that was really frustrating for me. So you have to remember, if you want to add to an existing piece of content, that is where you want to click on the search icon and then scroll down. And I also think that might have changed. I'm not even sure when I was testing the beta, I don't think they had that, but here's this random page that I accidentally added. Now, if you want to add things to it in that layout, then you absolutely can. But I wanted you to know about that. Okay, so, and if I want to clean that up, let's actually, if I click on this page and then I open it. So now I've just opened this page. So if you're confused, don't worry. I'm actually just going to delete this page and say, move this blank empty page to trash. And now I'm just back to this page again. Oh, wait, why does it say there's still related content? Let's go back to my database. No, it's here. So this page did not delete. So I'm going to click on it and just delete this page here. Okay, so I'm just coming back here to the comments for a second, and thank you. Thank you for the compliment. I don't always feel that way when I make mistakes on camera. And we've got H3O saying hello, want to watch from the beginning. And Mac is saying, yeah, friction can really make a difference in how productive you feel in a workflow. This is a really good example of why, when you're setting up this page, so let's just open up a layout, every single page now is this layout. What I just did might actually be something that is too much friction. So the friction principle is notice friction right away and then try to remove it. Or when you notice friction, try to address it right away. I found that having related content over here, I was just accidentally adding new things instead of hitting this. That bothered me. So I would say, if once you notice this is a problem, click on customize layout and say, I don't want this here. And so I think what I can do is for the grouping, if I click add a property, no, that's adding a new property. Okay, here, this is actually good that I did this. I can rearrange this, but I can also add it back to a property group, and I am going to put this in the related property group and then say apply to all pages. Now, when I have these open, and I think this should remember that when I open a page, it'll remember this. This to me, clicking on related content and seeing the picker, so much better for my workflow. That's because of how I've been using Notion though for the last number of years. So if you are someone who is new to using it, then you might not necessarily have that issue. But that is a really great, thank you, Mac, for bringing that up. That is an example of friction. So if you notice that you are accidentally adding a whole bunch of empty pages because of how you've set up this layout, then change the layout and get a better layout. But I did want to show you the layout. Now, the other piece that I don't know if we have time, and so I think I might make the decision to, okay, let's see if I can do this quickly, but I think I might have to do another stream. Let me know in the chat if you think that's a good idea. But what I would like to do is actually show an example of a related database, and I want to show you guests, and there's a reason for that. So let's call this the guests database, and this is, we'll say, click on table. This is going to be for when you have guests. Let's say you do a podcast or you do a video show where you are inviting guests. Tim's got time. It's Saturday. This is why I did it on a Saturday. Also, there's always a replay. But I also don't want to make this the longest video in the world. We are going to create this new table. So this is our guests table, and we've got the name of the guest. Let's actually I'm going to just delete this property and start fresh. We know that we've got the name of the guest. I would like to have the email of the guest. So let's just start to type for email and say, I want email. And maybe you also want to add media because maybe you want their headshot. So let's do the files and media, but let's call this headshot. And maybe you also want to have their title. So this will just be a text box, or we say title. What else? If there's anyone else watching live right now, what else would you collect if you had a guest, say, on your podcast? You probably want their website, right? So we've got their title. We want to add a URL. And so we can collect their website. And we also probably want their other social handles. And we might have to do these separate, which I think is fine for an example because you want to be able to keep those separate, especially because I'm about to show you a demonstration of using the form. So let's do a URL. Maybe they have we'll just do YouTube. We're going to do URL. See how quick it is? It doesn't take that long to build it. LinkedIn. And maybe if we click plus again, URL. This time we're going to add, did I do Instagram yet? I won't do all of them, but I do want to show you an example. Is there anything else you would ask from a guest? So, oh yeah, phone number for communication. You know what we could do? Let's do a select preferred communication. And we could say text, email, DM, and then we also we might have to be more specific with that DM. We also might then want to do the phone number in case they do like to text. They don't necessarily have to tell us that. So we have now this table, so it's pretty wide. But if you ever want to see all of your properties at a glance, just click on the 3 menus and look at all your properties and you can see them here. And maybe you want to move phone number up here a little bit, or let's just rearrange these a little bit. So name, title, let's do headshot, email, etc., preferred communication. So we'll put those in order. We've got all of that. What do they want to plug? Oh yeah, so let's add another property. So we can add a property from here. And let's just call this maybe promotion, current promotion. And let's actually do one more that's just a little more generic that we will just have as text and just say notes. This could be for us, this could be for them. So we've got this table of guests. This is for our content. And now in this case, maybe I am interviewing knitters and I want to be able to add a property for the guest. So I'm going to show you how to add a property from the page if I haven't already. So if I I know this is a blank page, but you can add a property from the page as well. So, and these are also out of order. So let's do a little cleaning up here. We've got current promotion, we have phone number, I think a headshot up here. We can have notes at the bottom, website, preferred communication. Okay, so kind of clean that up a little. And let's relate this to our content. So we click add a property. we can scroll down or type relation, but let's scroll down and choose relation. And we're going to connect this to our relation. So I want to show this. I want the guest's information to also show up. So this will be content is the name of this one. And then this will just be guests, which it'll default to that, but I'll just make sure it says guest or maybe guest, and then add relation. And here we now have a link to the content database. So if let's call this new page, anyone here knit? Let's just pretend that Eden knits. And I'm going to invite Eden to come on my show. And then I want to have a piece of content. This will pull up all of the content that I have. So if we were talking about what kind of, let's say, how I got started, let's actually just do a new piece of content. If I say, Eden tells us about learning knitting, and I'm just going to fix that. That's not a piece of content yet, but I can say new, and I've now added a piece of content here. And so that is connected. So I've got this information. And if I click on this link, it will actually open the page. So now we're in this content database, and I could say that this is going to be an interview on YouTube. So I can apply the template. And here I have, it fell under related, which is convenient. I just don't know if it's because it's the last section, but I have guest information. Then the other thing I can do, which is a more advanced property as well, is maybe I want to see some information about Eden on this page. There are a couple ways I can do this. So I can actually, when I click the plus, this opens those 3 dots. If you remember, we saw 3 dots before. I could say, I want to see Eden's title when I'm looking at this list. And maybe you want to see something else. But if we go back to the Eden page, then I can click on Eden, and maybe the title, I'll just say, I was going to write a different word, but I'm just going to say streamer. I was going to say streamer, BADASS. Okay, so now I've got streamer as the title. And if I click again on the video, so we're going to jump over to the video page. Now I can see the title beside the guest's name. So that's one option. The other option, maybe I want to see an actual separate property. So if I want to see a property about Eden from the other database, that's what I call a roll-up. Well, I don't call it that. Notion calls it. So we can go down to roll-up. This is basically, think of it as looking up information from another database. So if I say roll-up, I want the relation to be to the guest. Because remember, I'm looking at the content page right now. I want to be able to go into the guest database, and I want to see maybe the email of the person, and I just want to show the original version of it. And so now, where did that go? The roll up. I need to name it. So we'll say guest email. And actually, in this case, I would probably customize. This is where I'm getting carried away, aren't I? Customize layout. And I'm going to create a new section here. And this is going to have, I want the guest. How do I move my guest? Add to layout. There we go. So now we've got a guest spot, and I also want to, but I want these to be together. How do I? No, okay. I have to do this a different way. Doesn't matter. Now I'm getting distracted. Sorry, everyone. All right, let's just, let's pretend I didn't do that, or maybe we'll have it on the side. You get the idea. Okay, let's go back to my guest database. So let's just do a sample. So we'll just say eden@streamer.com. And so I've attached this email for my guest. Also, let's just delete these 2 boxes. So I'm just gonna grab both and click delete. So I've got Eden. Eden's a streamer. I can collect all the other information here. And when I go into the piece of content, so let's actually open, I'm gonna go to this new panel, and let's add this Eden tells us video. Now you can see the email of your guest. So it's over here, which is a little awkward. It's maybe not where I meant it to be, but you can see the email on your content page. This is where Notion gets so powerful, in that you can have these links. So if you have a sponsor database, you can do the same thing. On your video, you could see what is the name of my contact at the company that I'm working with, what's their email, are there any other details about that sponsorship that I can see and actually have them available when I'm looking at the content. And when I'm looking at the sponsor, I can see the information about the content. We can do the same thing on the guest information is I can see the information. So if I go back to guests, maybe another thing I want to see, let's just open the page, is I'd like to see the date of the video. So we'll do a roll up because we're pulling that information. We're kind of looking at another database. So let's call this content date. We are going to pull that from the content relation that we have, and we're going to look at the date property and show the original. Now there isn't a date. So if I go back to this Eden and gives us a date, maybe we're going to do that next Saturday. And then when I click back over to this guest database, I can see the date of the guest content. So these are the types of things that you can do with Notion. And also, I recognize that it can be a little overwhelming if you're just getting started. So there's one more thing I want to show you, which is a new feature, and then I'm going to wrap this up and maybe do a part 2. But if I click plus, there is a new option called form. And so form allows people to actually give you information directly in here. So if I click new form, it's related to this guest database. And it can actually take all the properties from this database and create a form. So let's start with the 12 questions that I already asked. And now we've got this form title. So maybe my show is Knit and Coffee with Cat. And I'll say here, thanks for being a guest on my show. Please fill out the form with your details. Okay, so we've got the name, and maybe I want to make sure this is required. I definitely do. I also want to make sure that I have the email of the person, and maybe I want to make sure I have the headshot. Now this one, I don't necessarily, maybe there's another way they want to share the picture with me. They don't want to upload it. I might not make this required. The title, this is their title. I might rename that, but you can have that required, not, etc. These I would not have required. Preferred communication, they can tell me what is their preferred way to communicate with me, and then they can also provide their phone number. And they talk about their current promotion, and if they want to add any notes, they can. And then content, they don't need to see this. So I am just going to actually delete this question. It doesn't delete the property, it just deletes the question on the form. And maybe for notes, that to me, that's the name of the property, but I don't necessarily need to show this. Say maybe I want to say any other details you want to share. There we go. And this one, while it is text, let's say that it can be a long answer. You can also add a description if you want to. So let's do that for here. And say, are you promoting anything right now? So this is where this form is pretty cool. All right, so we've got our form. Now we can preview the form, see what it looks like. And this is what it looks like. It's got the submit button. You can also, I think, change a few of the customized form. Now tells you need to upgrade in order to customize the form, but the form is actually an option on the free plan, which is amazing. And if I want to share the form, who can fill it out? So I actually want anyone who has the link, because if I send this to a guest, they're not a member of my space. So now I can actually share the link with people and then they can fill that out and have this. Now, one of the drawbacks is that if I've already added the guest to the database, then them submitting a form is going to add a new one. And so you might have to consolidate that. Or maybe you keep track of, maybe you have a separate database that just says, in guests I'd like to invite. And then maybe this one is actually just called confirmed guests or something like that. Maybe you have also a date picker potentially, or maybe once they've picked the date, you send them to this form and say, thanks for picking the date. Here, now fill out this form. And so this is another example of one of the great things that has just been updated. I see here that there is, I love Notion forms, but I'd like to be able to add more text or images in between the questions, or at least above the form. I can't seem to solve this. I mean, it's it's pretty new. And, yeah, I think the continue to give that information because I think that would be really helpful for people to see. But I think this is a really for a content creator, this is a great integration to be able to collect forms. Maybe you are doing a giveaway and you want to just put together a really quick form where people enter the giveaway. Now, for automations, there are automations like when a page is added, so when someone fills out a form, you can have so right now in the free plan, you're limited to a Slack notification. So this is where I do believe that if you are someone who wants to leverage automations, getting the paid plan makes sense. To me, it is not a very high annual cost. And you can send an email. I tested this last night with a form where when it fills out a form, it will send a notification. So it'll send me an email and I can choose who to reply to. So I can actually say reply to the email from the form. So when I hit reply in Gmail, it will automatically populate the name of the person and I think the name or their email from the form. So all I have to do is just hit reply in my inbox. And then I can say, thanks so much for filling out the form. I got your information. It's really pretty powerful. There are other things you can do in here as well. So if you had, and this is getting a little bit more advanced, but if you had a notification that when this comes through, then you might be able to, update if this is connected to another video, you might be able to then update something else, like check off a box in another one that the guest has filled out the form. That would start to get more complicated. But anyway, you get the idea. This is just beginning, and there are more and more options. And there are a few other things I wanted to share today, but I feel like with the length of the stream, I just don't want to make it unnecessarily long. But there are some really cool things that I would like to share, like the buttons, also mobile. So on my phone, I capture stuff to Notion. And an example, and I'm not connected right now, but for example, I have on my phone, yeah, you're not gonna be able to see this, a little widget, but the Notion widgets are a great way to add new content, but I use the widget plus the buttons in order to quickly add content and quick notes that I want to take. And the buttons are really amazing. But I also, the widgets, I like to set up a mobile view. So that's something that I think would be maybe worth doing in a second stream, just because and also I've been testing Apple shortcuts because I know one of the main complaints for people is that Notion is just a little bit too slow to capture things. And I understand the frustration. And so I have been playing with how do I use a shortcut? Now, obviously, this is for Apple users. I don't know what the equivalent is for Android, but maybe there's something and someone can tell me, is to actually just use, hey, SIRI, add new content idea. And then she just asked me what the idea is. I say it, and then that gets added to the database. It doesn't apply a template right now. That's where the buttons come in really handy, but there are ways to capture more quickly, and that is pretty darn exciting. I'm also wondering, are there any, just making sure that I went through, I think I covered all my different principles. So just to recap though, I'm not gonna go through all of them. The ones I wanna remind you of is start with good enough. It doesn't need to be perfect. Have enough properties so that you can at least organize your information. Also, you're not getting married. You can try the tool, see if you like it, and don't think that this is it. And if I set it up this way, then that's what it has to be. Also, if you got someone else's template and you feel like this is the only way to do it, no, there are other ways to do it. Figuring out what works for you, because remember, templates just solve problems. So if your template is slowing you down, it's confusing you, it's actually keeping you from making content, you need to have a change. And that's where you need to address your friction. Okay, I'm showing way more of these than I thought. And so updating the template, or maybe just start with something much simpler, but not too simple. And then finally, also just focus on today. Do not try to tell yourself, I need to go forward and put everything, all my old content into this new one. You do not have to do that. That's just not necessary. So just start with today or just port your ideas. And there are other tips for how to do that quickly, but I've gone pretty long today and I don't want to torture anyone. I would like to know in the chat, for those of you who are still with me, and it looks like there are some people who are still with me, if you're willing to put in the chat, was this helpful? How are you feeling? Is this good information to have? Also, are the principles over the top, or do you like the principles? Are those helping you? I'm a big concept girl. I like to think about how things fit together. So want to do a little check-in before we wrap up today. I do want to say a big thank you to everyone who showed up today. I know a lot of people who kind of popped in and popped out again. Thank you to everyone who's watched the replay, especially if you made it here on the replay. But big thank you to those who are here with me. So let's go down to the comments here. Also, I think, Tim, you're talking about the show with Eden. I would love to chat with Eden about knitting, but also I don't need another channel right now. So I got to be realistic. Fabian, you stuck with us. Awesome. Thank you so much. Loving choice. Very, very helpful. I'm so glad to hear that. And Chris is still here. Awesome. And yes, great. You have found it helpful. I'm so good to hear that. I feel, yeah, I mean, I've thought about it. I have too many, too many things on the go. Like the lower thirds and okay, awesome. I love it. Learned a lot again. Thank you so much. And then Homesick Mac, this is great. I could compare my system, get lots of inspiration for cleaning up a little. Oh, you know what I forgot? Ah, man. Okay, I also want to thank you, Alexis. And also a bit of awesomeness. Okay, I did forget something. And that was that the workshop I did a few weeks ago in person, I'm doing a virtual version. And so I will add that. I also didn't talk about Sansama. I will add that. I'll put it in the chat. So let me, because I put a Stream Deck button somewhere here. Yeah, here we go. I don't have the final details for the virtual. I know it's happening on the 19th of November, but I don't have everything set up, but I did put together a wait list. So if anyone is interested in the systems training, which is not Notion specific, so no matter what system you use, it'll help you reflect on what's working, what's not. Some of these principles, like where's the friction in my system? How can I simplify things so they're actually working for me? And so that is going to be on the 19th. And so I do have a waiting list. So if you want to get information for when that is available, there you go. If anyone was at Creator Camp a few weeks ago, you've seen a version of it. It's going to be a slightly modified version of that. And I also, oh, I see just a quick question about this. Do I use the prompter? Yes. So when I look forward into the camera, I can see this is a confidence monitor, as in I can see what you see. So I know what is going out on the stream, and I've got that on the prompter right now. Is the AI plan, you know what? I had access to the AI plan for a year because I'm a Notion ambassador, and I just didn't use it that much. In the early days, it would get confused pretty quickly. It would use, if you had something on the page and then you asked it another question, it would keep pulling from the same page. I think they have updated it. I think they've actually made a lot of changes to Notion AI, and it wasn't part of my workflow enough to be able to comment on the worthwhileness of it. I have thought about reinvesting and re-upping now that my free year ran out. But right now, because it's not a regular part of my workflow, at the moment, I am not paying for it, but I also am not using a ton of AI, or if I do, I just use the free chat GPT. Okay, I'm gonna wrap things up. I think I will do a part 2. I will keep everyone posted about the part 2. And thanks so much for joining me here today. I always like hanging out on a Saturday because there's just way less stress. And now I just get to go and relax, or maybe play in Notion a little bit more. So thank you everyone so much for joining, and I'll see you in the next one.